are joined by Avril and Dave from Uniquely Rock. Avril, thank you for joining us on Living Your Best Life.
Thank you for inviting us.
So let's talk a little bit about the business model. I'm going to talk to you first and then I'm going to jump into you, Dave. So the business as it is, how did it begin?
So I was building a house, and then Dave and I decided that it's such a lovely house and it's so unique in its way. So why don't we just start bringing in some different ideas of what to do with the garden? And so we came along and we thought, well, okay, let's try some rockwork, which is quite nice. So we're making our own pavers as well. And then we saw some quartz rock, which is actually beautiful. And then we decided, well, let's make something with that. And from there it started to evolve. So we made some lovely tables, bonsai stands, and all these things we put in, and we decided, can we go further than that with these pavers and so on. And that was when we looked around and thought, okay, let's bring in some other rocks, not just using quartz, which is what we did, and polishing them, and it's just evolved from there. But it definitely started with the garden being our own and to make it look our own.
So working with rocks itself is a unique form of art.
Yes.
Have you actually studied this? Did you work on this before you?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's just something we fell upon by our first rock that we saw and said, well, you know what, let's give it a try. If you don't try, you'll never know. And that's where it started from.
Can you remember your first piece?
Can we remember that first piece? It's probably lying in shambles somewhere, polished, over-polished, broken apart. Maybe just once or twice we made those mistakes because it can be quite sensitive. These rocks are not as tough as they look, some of them. And so yes, it's probably sitting in one of our gardens at the moment, yeah.
Let's talk about the tools that you require to actually break through this rock. Take us through a piece of art. What would you initially do?
Well, we would look at the rock, and from there, some of these rocks have their own design to begin with. They do. They can have that shape already. So you can basically work with what you have. And then just take your hammer and a chisel and start forming something out of it. And then say, okay, this can either be a basin, or maybe we can grow a tree through it, or maybe we can make a paver. It just really looks at the rock and say, well, what can we do with it, because it's already got that shape. Otherwise, we have to work quite extensively with it, where we cut it down into a much smaller piece, and from there we can decide further.
How long does it take from the initial thought to the end product?
That can be quite time consuming for some of them because there's a lot of work involved. You would see an end product and say, well, that couldn't have taken you that long, but it does. It does take a long time because there's cementing to go with it, there's the polishing of it, there's the cutting of it, you know, and there's also stands are made with it. It can be anything from a week to 6 months, really, depending on what we are making.
Do you sell your art?
We haven't been, no, not as yet. It's all sitting in our gardens.
Yes, that's beautiful.
Palatially. As time goes along, that would be our idea, but the end result is to bring out a book to show people that it can be done, you can do it too. A coffee table type book, and people can see as well. And then there will also be a sort of a DVD to go with it to show people DIY is possible with rockwork.
Fantastic. I'm going to look out for that book. Now we're going to turn our attention to Dave. So Dave, let's talk about your beautiful garden. I see these beautiful rock pieces, but I see bonsais in them as well.
Yeah, Maria, they're probably not the traditional bonsai that you find in Japan. So what we've really done is we've taken a tree and we've stunted it. A bonsai is really a stunted tree. And we've done something different. We've grown it through rocks and over rocks and hollowed out the inside of rocks. So instead of having the sand on the inside, we'll put the sand on the inside of the rock and put a cover on it. So a lot of the trees around here don't follow a formal type of bonsai shape. We just grow them as and how we feel fit. So we'll bend a piece of wood, a branch in a certain direction, and we'll redirect a root over a certain rock, and they just come out in quite interesting shapes.
So is there a reason you chose the bonsai and not something else?
We thought it complemented the rockwork quite nicely. So you've got a combination of rockwork, and in a way it almost adds value to the rockwork in some ways, because you've got a very sculptured rock and now you've got a bonsai perched on top of it. So it sort of enhances the whole, the whole design.
you know, in terms of what you do, you have to be very creative. I've seen some of the most fantastic things in your home. So when you are actually looking at creating something, do you sketch something out and then go and look for a rock, or does the rock appear and then you just manipulate it to what you think is best?
We look at a rock and we just think, well, should we put a plant on it, or should we pin another rock on top of it, or should we pin it to a piece of wood and put a light inside of it? So when we start, we don't really have any formal direction of where we're going to go. It's just finding a unique rock and perhaps cutting it into a shape that we need, and then even changing direction halfway through. You know, we might start a rock that we want to make a basin out of, and it ends up as a bonsai pot. You know, they're very similar in very ways. Just one is a plug hole, and we just put a tree in it instead.
Do you feel that as South Africans, this type of art is more accepted because we've got these big gardens and that sort of thing, or is it a new form and that we're just getting into it?
A lot of the stuff I haven't actually seen in many shops. There's lots of bonsais around, there's lots of bonsai clubs around. We haven't seen too many combinations of rock and bonsais, and as I said, it's not the traditional bonsai, it's more of a decorative tree. So the decorative tree has just been incorporated into the decorative rock to create something of value. That it's quite nice the way some of them have actually come out.
So I think we've had enough of talking. We need to see your beautiful art. I'm going to ask you to take us around.
We can do that. Let's go around and I'll show you some of the bonsais and rocks that we've got.
Perfect.
So this pyramid, the bases are just made out of offcuts of granite that we cut together. This is solid, also granite that we shaped and pinned a metal feature on. And then the start of the balls are something, we found this lying around on someone's farm. So we left the pitted area and we just cut and polished a select part of it, and then we rounded another piece to fit on, and then these three pieces we just pinned together. Quite an interesting feature. This is a fig of around about 15 years old, and we attached it to an old piece of driftwood. We then built a granite box without this cut out. This was initially filled with sand. We let the roots grow from the top into the sand, and then after about 7 or 8 years we cut the face out of it, and in another year we're going to probably build another base, another polished quartz base, so the roots will then grow from this into the next base.